Welcome into the On3 studios in Nashville, Tennessee. It is Monday morning. We are bringing you another episode of the Inside Scoop. We just got done with another wild weekend of recruiting. We're going to cover all of that today. And there's also three major developments that went down over the weekend that we're going to start with. Now, we had some major junior days last weekend. There were also two big 2024 decisions that were made. And remember, we're also in a dead period, which is kind of, it doesn't really mean what you think it means. It really just means that you cannot make visits face-to-face with coaches and recruits on campus or off campus. As far as social media, email, text, phone calls, that's all perfectly allowed. So the dead period is really not all that dead. All right. Let's take a look at what remains. We talked about five-star athlete Terry Bussey throughout the week because last weekend he made a trip to UGA. Midweek, it was a stop at LSU in the Texas A&M commitment. He was back at Texas A&M over the weekend. The number one athlete in America will make his final decision on signing day. Will he sign with Texas A&M or will it be a big flip to LSU or Georgia? You guys know. Comment section below. Let me know. What do we think Terry Bussey is going to do on National Signing Day 2024? Will he stick or will he flip? Let me know. Comment section below. All right, now let's get to those decisions that were made. Five-star wide receiver Gatlin Bair comes off the board. Now, Oregon's last commitment is also its only five-star commitment. Gatlin Bair chose Oregon over Michigan on Saturday, the number 30 overall player in the country. Well, he was trending to Oregon really once Jim Harbaugh made that decision to leave. I think Dan Lanning solidifying that he's going to stay at Oregon only helped their cause. And now Gatlin Bair is a Duck. He'll make it official on National Signing Day on Wednesday. All right, another big 2024 decision that went down was Amari Williams. He's an edge prospect, an elite edge in the 2025 cycle. He reclassified himself from 25 up to the 2024 class really late. He did it in December. Immediately after the news broke, he took an official visit to Florida State. It ended up being the only official visit he took. Throughout the fall, he did visit UF, Kentucky, Penn State, USC, among others, but started trending heavily to FSU after that official visit. And on Saturday, he made it official, committing to FSU, and then he will sign with the Noles on Wednesday. And that wasn't it. Because on Sunday, we saw another big decision. This time, it was the number one quarterback in the 2025 class. The number 5 overall prospect, Nebraska Alford, out of Birmingham, Alabama, committed to Ohio State at the end of his unofficial visit on Sunday. I kind of thought something might be going down because he had his entire family in tow with him. I mean, you don't usually see that this early in the cycle. So Nebraska Alford, the number one cornerback in America, now committed to Ohio State. The Buckeyes now have Devin Sanchez to go with him, the number 2 ranked cornerback in America. Quite the defensive class. We're going to talk more about this with Alex Gleitman here in a minute. We're just 2 days away from National Signing Day 2024, and we got a lot to cover in the show. We're going to get to it. We got recruiting insiders from Ohio State, Nebraska, Oregon, and Alabama on this show. Let's get to it. What's it going to take for this to be considered an all-time great defensive class for Ohio State? That's what we're going to find out in this video, and Buckeye recruiting is on fire. Ohio State just landed the number 1 corner in America, Nebraska Alford, moving their 2025 class up to the number 2 spot just behind LSU, and they're not done yet. Ryan Day wants to keep this recruiting momentum going. We got recruiting insider Alex Gleitman on the show to find out who could be the next elite recruit to commit to the Ohio State Buckeyes. But first, hit subscribe for me to the On3 Recruits channel. It's an exciting time, a pivotal offseason for Ohio State, and we got you covered. Hit subscribe for me. All right, let's bring on Alex Gleitman from Letterman Row. Now, Nebraska Alford committed on his visit. You don't see that a whole lot in these new recruiting times. A lot of times it's a commitment ceremony, it's a graphic, something. But it went down right at the end of his visit. Did something happen on the visit, or was that the plan the whole time?
Yeah, I think it was kind of the plan the whole time. I think coming into the visit, Ohio State had a lot of momentum. Tim Walton had really spent a lot of time with Naeem Alford, visiting down in Alabama whenever he could. They had him for a visit, toward the end of last summer. They really have built a strong bond over the last, 6-8 months, something like that. And I think, coming into this visit, you saw, I don't know if you've seen the pictures, but basically he had a ton of family on this visit with him. And it was, to me, he was coming on campus, and if everything kind of checked out as he thought it would, that was kind of his plan coming in. So it wasn't I thought maybe, he would silent commit to the staff on the visit potentially, and then maybe announce at a later date. So it wasn't a complete surprise that he announced on the visit, but obviously a nice surprise for Buckeye Nation for that to happen.
Yeah, adding the number 1 and 2 ranked corners in America to an already loaded class at number 2 in the country. Now, we're going to talk about a few names that if Ohio State can land these guys, it will round out this defensive class and potentially become an all-time defensive class. Here's who we're talking about: Dorian Brew, TJ Alford, London Merritt, and Justin Hill. We'll start with Dorian Brew. I put him on my list, Alex, because he's the number 3 rated cornerback in America. He's out of Conroe, Texas, but he's trending to Ohio State at 95%. So do you really think, is it possible for Ohio State to land the number 1, 2, and 3 ranked corners in America?
Believe it or not, yes. And the thing about Dorian Brew is that he moved to Conroe, Texas in the middle of this past high school season. He's actually from Clayton, Ohio, in the Dayton area.
Oh, wow.
He grew up in Buckeye country, just 45 minutes from campus. So the first, 2.5 years of his high school career and his whole life, were spent in Ohio. His mom she's in the Ohio State Athletic Hall of Fame for track and field. She was an outstanding track and field athlete. So there's a lot of ties to Ohio State here. And it's funny because if you talked about Devin Sanchez, Dorian Brew, Naeem Alford, Blake Woodby, before any of them committed, you would have said Dorian Brew is the most likely to be a Buckeye. Now, he was supposed to commit on January 24th. He ended up pushing that back, deciding to take some visits, see some other schools. He had a great time at USC, had a great time at Texas. I know, Texas A&M, Notre Dame, Michigan, they're all kind of in this thing. I still think Ohio State is the favorite to land Dorian Brew, but, now you have 3 corners in the class, and, maybe Brew could play a little bit of a safety too, and I'm sure he's not worried about competition. But you do have, as you said, the number 1, number 2, number 8 cornerbacks in this class already. Is this a situation where Dorian's like, I love Ohio State, but, maybe I'm going to go somewhere where it's maybe a little bit easier to get on the field sooner? I don't know. I think we'll see how things go. But as of today, February 5th, I would still have him most likely to go to Ohio State.
Wow, pretty unbelievable secondary class Ohio State's putting together. Now, I wanted to talk about TJ Alford. Actually, I talked with our Miami site about him last week because it seems like it's shaping up to be an Ohio State-Miami battle. Now, he has named a top 5 that includes Miami, Tennessee, Florida, Florida State, and UCF. Last week, we talked with our Miami site about him, and it seems like it's shaping up to be a Miami-Ohio State battle, but also he has visited Florida and Florida State recently. So what are you hearing right now on the 6'2", 204-pound prospect out of Vero Beach High School?
Yeah, I think, he's got a commitment coming up for March 30th, and I think Ohio State is in good position right now. They've been, in my opinion, the favorite for quite some time, but I know Miami feels like they're right in this thing. It's definitely one of those 2 schools, and I think that the bottom line is, regardless of who he commits to on March 30th, the other side is not going to quit until he signs on the dotted line in December. So I do think Ohio State is in position to get the commitment from TJ Alford come March 30th. But as Ohio State saw last cycle with a couple of guys that they thought that they had in the bag. I mean, Marquise Lightfoot, they didn't technically have him publicly committed. They had him silently committed. He ended up at Miami. Justin Scott was committed. He went to Miami. Jordan Lyle was committed. He went to Miami. The year before, it was Mark Fletcher. So Miami's been a little bit of a thorn in Ohio State's side as far as flipping some of their guys. So I think especially with the Florida kid, even if Ohio State gets him on March 30th, it's something that they're going to have to continue to battle with the Hurricanes and maybe some others until signing day in December.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens there. But let's talk about some defensive linemen because this can't be an all-time great class without some great defensive linemen. Now we want to start with London Merritt, top 100 prospect. He's down there at IMG Academy in the state of Florida. How much of a priority is he right now for Ohio State?
Yeah, I think he's a big priority. Ohio State visited him about a week and a half ago now. It was Ryan Day who went down and saw him. And even before he was at IMG, which is an easy stop for any coach to make because there's so many great prospects there. He's a Georgia native, and they were down in Georgia. He's made multiple visits to Ohio State for games, for camps. I think Ohio State and Alabama have been the two schools that, at least in the early going, had a little bit of an edge with Nick Saban retiring. I think it could obviously help Ohio State while London Merritt has to make some new relationships on the Alabama side, although there are some still familiar faces there. And Alabama's still Alabama at the end of the day. But, I think, Georgia, the fact that Georgia's weird sometimes with their in-state guys. Like, there's just a couple guys at times where they're not always priorities for the Bulldogs where they are for, the Alabamas, Ohio States, Clemsons of the world. And it makes it a little bit easier to go into the Peach State and grab a prospect like London Merritt. But him now being at IMG makes it even a little bit easier. And it's going to be a battle. There's definitely a lot of schools in this, but Ohio State is a top priority for London Merritt and vice versa. So I think right now they're probably where they need to be heading into, maybe some spring unofficial visits, then summer official visits before a decision comes.
All right, one more prospect we got to hit on, and that is edge Justin Hill, number 170 overall. Now, he's out of Cincinnati, Ohio, and it seems like this is one of those in-state priorities, but there's a lot of teams across the country that are coming after Justin Hill. Can Ohio State close on this one early, or is this one going to be a real battle?
Yeah, I think they can. I think he's got a decision set. I believe it's for July 3rd, which is his birthday. So we're going to have to wait a little bit for Justin Hill's decision. He's going to take official visits. He'll take a bunch of spring visits as well. He was at Georgia this past weekend. He was at Oregon a couple weeks back. He was at Ohio State, I think even the week before that. So he's making the rounds. He's making the visits. I think those three schools, Ohio State, Oregon, and Georgia, are probably the main ones to pay attention to here right now. I mean, there's definitely some others in the mix, Penn State and Michigan, a few schools that are going to continue to come after Justin Hill. But I think Oregon, Ohio State, Georgia are probably the three that I think are the main contenders. And I think Ohio State will get it done in the end. I put in an RPM prediction for Ohio State to land Justin Hill. Okay. And I think he's a guy who's going to rise in the rankings. He's a linebacker that's kind of transitioning to an edge player. And I think when you have the upside and the athleticism that he does coming from the linebacker position with his body able to fill out, he's a guy who I could see ending up as a top 100 prospect in this class, where right now he's more of a top 175, 200 prospect.
All right, so off this list, it seems like, what do you think? TJ Alford is probably going to be the next to commit. He set that March 30th date. Alex, I just got to ask you, which way you leaning right now? I know we got over, 5 or 6 weeks until this decision, but which way you leaning right now on TJ Alford?
I got Ohio State. I think, again, March 30th, I got Ohio State. December 20-something, we'll see.
Yeah. All right. Well, for March 30th, we'll pencil in Ohio State for that one. All right. I mentioned that Ohio State has made a run up the rankings. They're currently number 2 and they have a ton of momentum, but the dead period just started. So what does that mean for Ohio State recruiting? Does it slow down? What should Ohio State fans expect right now?
Yeah, I think it's going to slow down a little bit, but we're just a few weeks away from spring practice starting, and then you're able to host visitors again. So I think it will probably be good for, obviously there will be communication, as far as what's allowable, phone, text, all that good jazz. But I think kind of there won't be a ton of action between now and when the spring visits start. I think really Ohio State's going to focus on winter conditioning, getting their team ready in the weight room, and getting them ready out in the practice field. And, coaching staff, we'll see if Bill O'Brien sticks around, if he heads to Boston College or whatnot. But getting guys like that acclimated, they still technically have a spot open. They could elevate James Laurinaitis to full-time assistant, bring in a special teams coordinator, bring in, some other sort of defensive assistant. So I think that's the type of stuff that they're going to focus on. And then, just in a few weeks, start hosting a ton of spring visitors for practice.
All right, Ohio State fans, tap in. Let me know, is this class going to be an all-time great on the defensive side of the ball? Who do you guys want to see Ohio State land? Let me know, comment section below. All right, Alex Gleitman from Letterman Row, thanks for stopping by the Inside Scoop, talking some Buckeye recruiting today.
Absolutely. Always happy to be on, guys.
Alabama hosted their first Junior Day event under head coach Kalen DeBoer on Saturday. They had in-state prospects, recruits from the West Coast, Northeast, other teams' commitments. They were all in Tuscaloosa, and I got Bama insider Andrew Bone on to break this one down. It was a pivotal event for the staff as a month-long dead period begins Monday. Well, that's today, so we're in the dead period. All right, we're going to get into it, but first, Bama fans, hit subscribe for me to the On3 Recruits page. All recruiting, all the time, and we need Alabama fans to be a part of it. Hit subscribe for me, please. All right. Let's bring on Andrew Bone from Bama Online. Now we're going to talk about some big names on campus that include Jordan Young, Anthony Rogers, Derek Smith, Marcus Harris, and Antonio Coleman. I want to start with Jordan Young. He's number 53 overall in America, and he came to Tuscaloosa from North Carolina. So he made the trip over, and he's 6 foot 170, listed as an athlete. Ready to narrow that list down to a top 6 here real soon. Schools like him both on offense and defense. What do you think Alabama sees him at or this early in the recruitment process?
Well, I think they see him as an athlete, but also I think that defensive back probably is an area that they really like him. But he's also one of the best. As we said, he's an athlete. He's the number one athlete in the country. So I think Alabama would love to see him in camp this summer. Not saying he has to camp to have a committable offer, but you get him to camp, see what he can do, or at least evaluate him during spring practice and say, this is a kid that could be a dynamic slot weapon for us in Kalen DeBoer's offense, or does he potentially play a cornerback? I mean, this is a kid that can do it all. Certainly a guy that Alabama really likes a lot. He already kind of said that Jordan Young said that Alabama was his dream school growing up. They would certainly make his top 3, top 4. So when he makes that top 6 list, we certainly expect Alabama to make the cut. But it looks like he had a great trip to Tuscaloosa this past weekend. Good to get him on campus kind of right away. I mean, this was Alabama's first really big event under Coach Kalen DeBoer, 3 weeks in, and they had 50-plus prospects on campus, including some players ranked number 1 at their position, like Jordan Young.
Yeah, some big names. And now we're going to move down the list a little bit to number 77 overall. And thankfully, he's already committed to Alabama. I'm talking about running back Anthony Rogers. So, Andrew, after this visit, first of all, this was, I believe, his first trip to campus to meet Kalen DeBoer in person. How solid is his commitment? And is he somebody that can help Alabama recruit moving forward?
Well, I think he's a lot more solid than he probably was maybe even a week ago. I think there were still some questions because he had never met Coach DeBoer. I think one of the biggest things is Coach Robert Gillespie, the running backs coach, still in Tuscaloosa, not leaving, remains on the staff. So, that was a big key for them. But, Anthony wanted to sit down with the new staff, talk to them, kind of make sure that, he's still fitting their plans moving forward, and he does. This is a kid that, played at IMG Academy this past season after transferring from Pike Road High School in Alabama. So he's basically an in-state kid for the state of Alabama and for University of Alabama. I think that he is a little bit more solid now. Will he take some more visits? Probably so. I think all kids now take as many trips as they possibly can. But Anthony seems like he's going to be solid. He seems like he's going to be a big help on the recruiting front. And based on the comments that we have from him on Bama Online right now, it certainly sounds like the visit helped Crimson Tide and this new staff out a lot with Anthony Rogers, kind of really shored things up with his commitment status.
All right, the next prospect on the list is ranked number 89 overall, so we're still in that top 100. From Selma, Alabama, we're talking about Derek Smith. He's an athlete as well, 6 foot 185. Now, FSU and Auburn already got him on campus this weekend, though. It was Alabama. I think he'll probably take trips to LSU and Ole Miss. And again, Andrew, what position does Bama like this athlete at, and what are your sources saying about chances of landing him?
Yeah, another kid that could play on either side of the ball, and I think that it's really kind of up to him right now. And we've seen a lot of lot of top athletes come to Alabama throughout the years, especially during the Saban years, whether it was Cyrus Jones, Trevon Diggs, or Darius Stewart. These were guys that were recruited as athletes, but they were going to see them in practice first, playing that wide receiver, playing in the secondary. Which one, did they feel like they could really succeed at? And that was where they were going to, ultimately play. With Derek Smith, he is wide open. This is a guy that had, I think, over 2,000 all-purpose yards as a junior on the offensive side of the ball, and then he had close to 100 tackles on the defensive side of the ball. He's a do-it-all athlete, and I think getting him on campus was really important for Alabama because he doesn't do a lot of visits. He's starting to take more visits now, but he's always had this really quiet, under the radar recruitment. He's taken some visits throughout the year, but nobody really knows exactly which way he's leaning. But Alabama, under this new staff, has really prioritized him. Already seen him twice over the course of the last couple of weeks, and then getting him on campus really big. So getting that relationship started off to a great start. We'll kind of have to see how it develops over these next few months. But I think Alabama certainly has made a big move with Derek Smith. As we head into, I guess we are into the dead period, but going into the spring, Alabama is certainly one of those top 3 schools for him.
Yeah, and speaking of making an impact, wide receiver Marcus Harris from Mater Dei High School out in California was on campus, number 98 overall, and it was a productive visit for him. He picked up an offer while in Tuscaloosa. What kind of impact did that make on his recruitment?
I think he's very interested in Alabama. He had a previous relationship with the Washington staff, and they quickly extended him an offer when they joined the Crimson Tide, and they want to continue that pipeline from Mater Dei to Tuscaloosa, which has been incredibly beneficial for Alabama throughout the last several years with guys like Bryce Young, and even this year's recruiting class with Zabian Brown. Damani Jackson transferred in. He's a Mater Dei guy. So, Alabama would love to continue to recruit that school extremely well. And they've got connections there on the West Coast. And I think he had a great visit. We have an in-depth interview with him at BamaOnline.com right now, where he really talked about just the overall program, the production at the wide receiver position, the relationship with new wide receivers coach Marcus Shepard. He talked about meeting with offensive coordinator Ryan Grubb. So he plans on getting back to Tuscaloosa this spring, maybe even during the summer. So it's still somewhat of a new relationship, but there is high interest there. And I think pretty much any wide receiver in the country is going to be very interested in this offense. They had some great wide receivers on campus this weekend.
All right. Now, the last name I want to talk about is probably the most intriguing one to me. Antonio Coleman, former Alabama defensive line commit, flips to Auburn in December and is back in Tuscaloosa this weekend. He's from Saraland High School. Now, what do you make of him attending this weekend's Junior Day?
I thought it was big for Alabama to get him on campus because he had a surprise flip from Alabama to Auburn back in mid-December. This wasn't one of those situations where he flipped to Auburn after Nick Saban retired. He flipped to Auburn before the Rose Bowl game, and it was kind of unexpected on both sides. So getting him back on campus to meet with the new staff, especially Freddie Roach, still being the defensive line coach at Alabama, still going to be recruiting him, still being there. I thought that was really good for the Crimson Tide to have him on campus. But one thing that we're also watching is Auburn just lost its defensive line coach to the Jacksonville Jaguars. So how much of an impact will that have on Antonio over the course of the next few months? I think obviously this is a new relationship with Coach Kalen DeBoer, but he still knows some familiar faces. Plus his teammate Ryan Williams is going to sign with Alabama on Wednesday. So we know that Ryan's a big recruiter. He's going to be recruiting Antonio for the next several months. So we'll see if that has any benefits. But I do think that getting him on campus was a good step in the right direction to at least getting that interest back. I don't know if he's going to flip, but at least getting that interest level and getting him somewhat intrigued with this new staff is really positive.
Yeah, well, getting him on campus this early in the cycle can't hurt. You know the formula. Just get him on campus again in the spring, again in the summer, then in the fall, and go for that late flip. We'll see what happens. Now, Andrew, I wanted to talk to you about that dead period. Like we said, it runs until about March 4th or 5th, so it's a full month. Is this a much needed break for Alabama coaching staff, or was the momentum finally starting to turn and things were actually going their way and maybe this isn't a needed break?
I mean, I think it's a needed break for everybody. I mean, it's been pretty wild since Nick Saban's retirement. Tim Watts and I were talking the other day about how we were just kind of counting down the end of the transfer portal season, and then all of a sudden Nick Saban retires, and that 30-day window opened back up. We had all the the decommitments, recommitments, and stuff like that. But now you get a coaching staff in here that. As soon as they pretty much arrived, they were all out on the road trying to recruit and trying to help, settle down any of the current players from potentially transferring. And I thought they did a pretty good job for the most part in that regard. Now you kind of get to sit down, get to move your family to Tuscaloosa. You get to kind of get an idea of what the city of Tuscaloosa is about, but also you get to sit down at the facility, sit down in film room, start breaking down different players that you are going to be recruiting over the course of the next few months. Now, we saw a lot of offers that have been extended. A lot of those offers are still kind of contingent on if more evaluation, evaluation on and off the field, not just on the field. So you got to look at academics and stuff like that. But there's going to be a lot of evaluating that's going to be happening over the course of this next month, trying to figure out who they want to bring in, for spring practices, for the A-Day game. Coaching staff's going to get their recruiting territories situated over the course of this next month. So it's a much needed break, but you can guarantee those guys are going to be working every single day.
All right. Well, Alabama hosts their first junior day under Kalen DeBoer. It goes excellent, and you guys did a great job covering it. You guys have interviewed over a dozen prospects coming out of this thing. Go check it all out on Bama Online. Andrew Bone, thanks for dropping by the Inside Scoop today.
Thank you, Josh.
2024 recruiting is pretty much wrapped up, but Nebraska is not done adding talent. I got Sean Callahan, Nebraska recruiting insider, on this video to talk about the latest prediction he had and whether or not Cornhusker fans will have something new to celebrate on National Signing Day. But first, do me a favor, Nebraska fans, hit subscribe to the On3 Recruits channel. We love talking Nebraska recruiting, and we'd love to have you guys on board, so hit subscribe for me, please. Okay, let's bring on Sean Callahan from Husker Online. Now, Nebraska's top 2024 commitments, here they are: QB Dylan Raiola, Grant Bricks, Carter Nelson, corner Mario Buford. Really a solid class. So, Sean, I want to ask you, how would you grade Matt Rule's 2024 recruiting class, taking into account talent, but also filling of needs?
Well, I think before Dylan Raiola, it was a solid class. You add Dylan Raiola, an industry-rated 5-star quarterback, and that really has brought things over the top. It's kind of given it a true face, a true identity. But then you're seeing guys like Carter Nelson really emerge. I mean, I thought Carter Nelson at the Polynesian Bowl, I was there all week, looked outstanding in Hawaii, was the game's leading receiver. He played in the All-American Bowl in San Antonio, showed what he could do. Closing Grant Bricks was big too. Number one player in Iowa. They got the number one player in Nebraska. So they were really able to get, some key regional targets, and then having just that identifiable quarterback like Dylan Raiola, I think is going to pay dividends for Matt Rule in the future.
And Sean, Nebraska's not done yet. Over the weekend, one of the top unsigned, uncommitted prospects in the country, there's really not many, began trending heavily to the Cornhuskers. I'm talking about Keona Wilhite. He goes 6'5", 230 out of Arizona, one of the many Washington commits that departed after Kalen DeBoer left Alabama. Sean, Michigan State and UCLA also making a late push, but why do you have him predicted to land at Nebraska?
Well, yeah, the story with Keona Wilhite and his recruiting, it's been a roller coaster for this kid. He signed a letter of intent with Washington. We know Kalen DeBoer took the job at Alabama, which has really changed a lot for him. So he was released from his letter of intent, went back on the market. Michigan State, UCLA, and Nebraska, and even Texas, those were kind of the major players that were involved. He visited Nebraska first for an official visit. Went well, but it was one of those midweek visits, so those are always tough. You don't really have a great feel on a midweek visit when the staff's out on the road and whatnot. And there was a thought that he was going to visit Texas as well on a weekend visit. That never happened. Well, last week on Wednesday, all the indications we had were Nebraska was not going to end home on Friday, and he was essentially a silent commit or heading to UCLA. Well, then the rumors about Chip Kelly began to circulate that he was interviewing for NFL coordinator positions, even college jobs, coordinator jobs, looking to get out of Westwood. And I think after what happened with Keona Wilhite with Arizona or with Washington losing their coach, that really changed a lot for him in his thought process. So I think it reopened the door for Nebraska. And then on Saturday, you saw members of Nebraska's defensive coaching staff teasing a new commit. We believe that is Keona Wilhite. I mean, that's really the only 2024 name out there on the board.
Yeah.
So I think on signing day, Husker fans are going to get some good news with Keona Wilhite.
Hey, opportunistic right there. 6'5", 230. Think about that. They're going to add a quality edge rusher here right at the final moment. Not a lot of teams making moves at all. So Nebraska picking one up late is a big move. Now, we are currently, as of today, in the NCAA dead period, a much-needed dead period and rest for the college coaches. But what can we expect coming out of it for Nebraska recruiting? Will there be a big visit weekend in the spring coming up? Inside Scoop listeners and at-home chefs, I need you to listen in. HelloFresh, they can take the stress out of dinner. HelloFresh can deliver everything you need to cook up tasty meals right to your door, saving tons of time. And I use it because who has time to hassle with the grocery store, spending time in checkout lines? I just can't stand it. So skip that extra trip and instead get fresh ingredients and delicious recipes delivered straight to your door. Just like always, HelloFresh's ingredients travel from the farm to your door so you know they're fresh, and everything arrives pre-portioned so you can get it right and get to cooking quick. Me and my fiance actually made HelloFresh last night. She made the order. I cooked it. Of course, it was delicious. Only took about 30 minutes. We didn't have to come up with a recipe, and we saved money. We made the chickpea rice bowl, veggies, and chicken. It was delicious. So you guys need to get on this wave. And here's what we're going to do. I got something to give you for free as well. Go to HelloFresh.com/Josh Newberg free and use code Josh Newberg free for free breakfast for life. That's one breakfast item per box while subscription is active. That's free breakfast for life at HelloFresh.com/Josh Newberg free with the code Josh Newberg free. HelloFresh, America's #1 meal kit.
Yeah, they have a later spring here. Spring ball, the spring game is April 27th. That's one of the later ones you're going to see in college football. So they will not begin their spring practices tentatively until the last week of March, which would give them 5 straight weeks of practices. So I'll be interested on their approach, what they'll do. My guess is they'll wait until at least the first weekend of spring practices to have visitors in, because it doesn't make a lot of sense to bring a lot of visitors in until you have practices going. And obviously that red-white game on April 27th is a big one. Nebraska gets huge crowds, 70, 80,000 plus. Maybe you're going to sell out for the spring game. The spring game tickets go on sale this week in Lincoln. And with Dylan Raiola, there's 23 newcomers on campus, counting transfer players and freshman players. So it's going to be an exciting spring to watch Nebraska when you have so many new players on this roster, led by guys like Raiola on that April 27th red-white game.
Man, that's like a quarter of the roster being flipped in one offseason. That's huge. And Sean, we're going to talk. We just talked about Keona Wilhite, who could be yet another addition to that 2024 class. Now, obviously, he's not an early enrollee like Raiola and the other group. He'll be here in summer, but a much-needed addition at 6'5", 230 pounds coming off that edge. Sean Callahan with Husker Online. Thanks for stopping by today on the Inside Scoop.
Hey, thanks, Josh.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed that content, be sure to subscribe to the On3 Recruits channel. We have a new page dedicated only to recruiting. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button right now.